Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you at throughout this country. Thanks for pulling up with your boy George Guy. Glad you can make it, and no matter where you're at, it is a new year, right? So I want to say Happy New Year to everyone, and thank you for joining us as we've launched a pull-up conversation where we. So I like to start by talking about where the pull-up comes from. I mean, the pull-up is really about, no matter where you're at, you say, hey, I'm gonna pull up on you, and that was a fun thing. For me, I use it as a gesture on social media when I would pull up to exercise. And so I would always try to give you visuals of what it looks like when you're actually going to prepare. And I would be funny, and I would talk about a certain song and those type of things. That became a thing. People would say, hey, man, I'm pulling up. I'm working out. I'm doing something. They were talking about what they were pulling up to. So what I tend to believe is that, whatever you're doing, you got to prepare for. And pulling up is a part of that. And so that's what this platform is all about. I want to give a shout out to my man James Scott and the crew over at Our Neutral Voices for this collaboration. We're in the season of appreciation and those that are doing great things. So we want to say Our Neutral Voices for all that they're doing throughout the community, both here in the city, but also regionally and also nationally. We want to make sure that we shout them out again in the season of appreciation, as you should as well. But today, as we kick off the new year, I am ecstatic today. We have someone here that with us today is going to have a conversation and going to discuss a lot of things. But I want to say that I'm not easily when it comes to being. I'm impressed by a lot of things and inspired by a lot of things. But this man that we have here today, Mr. Clifford Clarke, is someone who is extraordinary in what he does every day. He's a man of many talents.
Thank you.
Someone who I respect, and I think I wouldn't say. I'm just not going to say this. I think everyone that I know that knows you respects you.
Oh, thank you.
And I don't think everybody. A lot of people can't say that.
Thank
But
you.
people are not used to me seeing having paperwork here. But I had to have my paperwork. Although I've been knowing Clifford for some time now, I too did not know, and I wanted to make sure that I got everything down that you've been a part of. So, business professional,
Yeah.
public servant,
Yep.
understands technology, understands business, leadership, community minded, someone who's really invested in community, educator, lifelong educator, including being a professor, investing in students. But the one thing that I think that is makes you, in terms when we say extraordinary, is that you're also a pilot.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Among some of the other things that you've done,
Yeah.
And I want to stress the fact that you're a business professional because I think that people need to understand that. And you've been a civic person. You've worked for the city.
Yep.
And done some amazing things there. And so it's interesting when people can, when someone really exudes the idea of public and private partnership and understands the importance of that and live it. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to introduce you to some, but a global leader himself, Mr. Clifford Clarke.
Thank you. Thank you. It is my pleasure and honor to be in this conversation with you. So I'm looking forward to it,
Yeah.
to share. I think a lot of people know one facet of me, and then they know a different facet of me. And I doubt in our time frame we're going to be able to cover the various different pieces, but I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So how are you, man? How's things going?
I'm doing good. I often say that I am blessed.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that way with all the things that's going on in the world today, with so much discord. I look at where I am, where my family and my friends are. I would say that I am blessed, but we got work to do.
Yes, I mean, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. We got work to do.
And, Cliff, you're in a lot of circles, man.
Mm-hmm.
You don't mind me saying this. I mean, you're on a bank board, and people don't know that banks have boards.
Yeah.
Board of directors, and you're on a bank board. So from a finance side, you understand that from a community level. Of course, you're a consultant with your consulting company, and you're in the education space. Now is a time. That's why I thought that this platform was important for people to understand. I mean, what is the responsibility that we should have right now in terms of particularly in the Black community, in terms of where should we? Because you're an entrepreneur, where should our efforts? You're thinking right now about this moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really feel strongly that we need to set good examples and we need to mentor. We need to course correct where necessary, because I think that a lot of opportunities pass us by where we could have done something and we didn't.
Sure.
One quick example, I teach a course. I teach a variety of different courses, but this particular course was project management. And in my class, I had two individuals who were athletes. And oftentimes, depending on the educational institution that I'm with, I have a lot of athletes in my class. And we're here in Fort Wayne, so you could probably try to narrow down which one of the institutions there are. But the bottom line is that there's no NCAA Tier 1, Division 1 school inside Fort Wayne. Right. And even though these individuals are great athletes and everything else like that, and they want to perform high as an athlete, I just try to keep reminding them that your scholastics are so very important, because after your athletic career is done, you're going to rely on your scholastics to do whatever it is that you want to do. So I try to encourage them, particularly for African American men in my class. I try to encourage them to pay attention and to do good work and not pass this opportunity to get a good education.
Right. So we know you're about service and advocacy, and of course, I should have mentioned this. Cliff and I are part of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We have to say that. That's
absolutely.
But I say that to say that much of what you just said is about service and advocacy. That obviously comes from somewhere. I introduce you as a global leader, and you're a modest person at best, a very humble person. But Cliff is a global leader. He works around the country and probably does some international work. So I wasn't being facetious when I said that. It's clearly what you do. It had to start from somewhere, Cliff.
Yeah.
And I ask folks when we come and have these conversations, because I think that there are people in our community, particularly, they get confused on where they're at in life, and because they don't see a lot of variety or diversity. You talked about sports, and so sometimes people just see what's on TV, sports, but there are many people doing many things.
Yeah.
And you're one of those people. So talk about where did that start?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Now, I know you're in Indiana now, but I know you have some roots.
Absolutely. I'll talk about that.
So talk about that, where that come
Yeah.
from, and talk about in the sense of what kind of upbringing, what kind of child was Cliff?
Yeah.
Clifford.
So my roots, my parents are from the West Indies, right? My father was born in Jamaica, and my mother was born in Panama. So the family as a whole was from the West Indies, and during the time of building the Panama Canal and doing things of that nature, my mother's side of the family migrated to Panama to provide military police and things like that. So that's where my mother's side, that's where my Latinx type of thing, even though I don't really claim that too much, but I mean, I have that Panamanian background too. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, right, to my both parents being there. My father was a chemical engineer, third class. Basically, he studied and passed the licensing exam for the state, and it was in New Jersey at the time. And then my mother was a licensed practical nurse, so she kind of climbed her way up the ladder in nursing. So I had a very good, solid, middle-class upbringing where I can honestly say that there wasn't too many things that if I thought that I wanted for.
Sure.
I mean, in my teenage years and everything else like that, I had the opportunity to travel internationally, generally on this part of the hemisphere, but, I was out of the country and things of that nature. Went back and forth to the Caribbean, and so I had a very, very good upbringing. I have one sibling, my sister, and basically we enjoyed a very, very solid upbringing. Now, that being said, let me back up. Jamaica is an international country. A lot of people don't really think about it like that, but we have Indian, German, obviously American, of just a whole variety, Asian, just a whole variety. And Jamaica's motto is out of many one, So I really, really appreciate diversity.
Sure.
Both my parents instilled in me, and my sister for that matter, service, right? So we weren't going to be able to just slide through without serving community, doing something, everything else like that. So that seed was planted very, very early in my life. So coming up, I think I didn't really want for anything. However, I will say that New York changed during a period of time. So I can remember when I was a very young man, it was a very integrated neighborhood. It had Italian, Jewish folks, and everything else that lived in the neighborhood. By the time I had left that area, it was fundamentally gentrified, where it was just pretty much an African American neighborhood. Every white flight, as we call it, people leave the neighborhood, and there was a lot of changes. And New York has had its issues, but those are some of the things that really kind of cemented where I was in my head, and some of the things that I needed to do in my life as I moved on.
What kind of student were you? And I guess what was the influence of your parents?
Yeah.
Because again, I think that there are people out here. I listed all the things that you do, and it started from somewhere.
Yeah.
So talk about that.
Yeah. So I was a good student. I was I would say even an exceptional student. I really liked math and things of that nature. I went to a school that you might consider to be similar to Anthus, where it had a technical track and a career track kind of thing. And I was on
Anthus, for the folks out there, is more of a career-oriented specialty school.
Right.
That really focuses on young people when they want to, start their career and that
right.
type of thing.
And so basically, it was William E. Grady Vocational Technical High School, and so it had plumbing, woodworking, all of the trades, electrical, and so on and so forth. But it also had a technical track, right? Okay. And the technical track was college bound, and it had, the math, and we had pre-calc, geometry, trig, algebra, so all the higher level math. And I really enjoyed math and everything else of that nature. I had a teacher, you'd be surprised what you remember, but I had a fundamental teacher in English, and that she really introduced me to a lot of reading. Up until that time, I really wasn't that big of a reader. Right. But she's like, well, no, just read what you want. Pick whatever you want, Sure. And obviously back in the days, comic books were big, but that wasn't really what got me. I think I started reading books. I was. Okay, yeah, good. Marvel, of course. Okay, Marvel. Yep. Iron Man and all that other stuff. Right. Absolutely.
We digress.
Yes, no problem. But I started reading. I'll back up. What you find is you in schools, there's a scholastic program, and there's material that's approved generally by the state.
Right.
Okay. And I know we're part of the issues right now is what makes a ban and this, that, and the other. But you can imagine that the material that was given as part of the program was probably had very little to do with my heritage or anything that really excited me. And I started reading books on, like basketball players, and Dr. J was big in my day. So, it's like, where his journey and things of that nature.
Right.
So to shorten the message, I was a good student academically. That had its pluses and its minuses, because in high school, everything came easy from a scholastic standpoint, and that had a little bit of a hiccup by the time I got to college. But I was really good academically. I was very inquisitive. Sure. Like I mentioned before, my father was an engineer, and I was in the technology side. So like the audio was my big thing. So I started disc jockeying many moons ago.
I didn't even mention that. It's a pull-up moment. Clifford is also a DJ as well. So that's interesting. So that started young.
That started very young. And in fact, I did not only disc jockeyed music is post-production. I did pre-production, which is, the 24 track, 48 track stuff in the studio with the bands and the guitars and the drums and the whole nine. I did all of that.
I never knew that.
I did.
That's why your sound is so crisp when you do
well, thank you. I did the splicing on 4 and 8 track machines, right? Wow. So this is tape, right? Yeah. So magnetic tape reels where you move the tape back across the head and then you'd slice it. And I did all of that. So anyway, my big thing was understanding how all this stuff worked. And I can tell you.
Before college?
Yes, this is all before college.
In high school?
Yes, this is in high school. Right, it drove my parents crazy because like every time you turn around, something was disassembled, taken apart, trying to figure out how to put it back together again. I remember I tore up my father's receiver back in the day. Right, he had these big console sets, right? With the
you mess with the receivers and them equipments for
and even though we were middle class, it still took a little bit to get that stuff right.
That's right.
And so anyway, I know there were many occasions my father was not too happy about me ripping something apart, trying to figure out how. And mind you, and again, I didn't have a strong foundation back then. It was more a curiosity, right? So I can honestly say that there were more things failed to go back together than did. So
and I say pull up moment, and we say that in jest, but that's serious because you just said a few things there. I'm gonna go to the last thing you said because a word that I think people don't use enough. I used to be teased. George is my name, but there's a book. Curious George, right? And that used to make me mad, right? Curious George. But you said something right there that I think is so important right now. Yeah. You were a curious kid. And that's a pull-up moment for those of you out there, that being curious is actually a good thing, right?
To this day, I mean, I do enjoy sports, but I prefer like the Smithsonian Channel and Science Channel. I mean, I'm just a geek. I tell people that I'm proud of that. I joke. I say it's right there in Matthew. Like the geeks will inherit the earth. And it doesn't really say that, but you get my point. I just curious about how things work, how just all sorts of different things. And as as a pilot, people ask me, well, how'd you get into that? That's just fluid dynamics, air current moving over a wing. And I've always been interested in that and speed and just curious.
That curiosity just continue. You just continue to build off of that. Making good decisions along the way to not interfere with those. Yeah. And being a dreamer. Yeah. Right? I think that's part of that too, right?
And I think that's another good thing that one of the things, and as you know, do a little one-on-one coaching with individuals and stuff like that. And I often tell them that I got this from one of my mentors too, but also from my parents and things like that, to kind of put your stuff down, right? Put your affirmations down on paper and things of that nature. Actually, I keep a copy of one of the older ones that I had done with a mentor earlier. And, like all those boxes are checked, so you got to make a new sheet, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're always trying to reach for more and more and more. And, but also in that same sense, Spider-Man, to whomever, whatever's, for those those are given a lot, have a lot of responsibility, right? And so, always back to community and things of that nature and sharing. That was one of the things. I mean, we were a middle class family, but we come from the old school, waste not, want not, a lot of hand me down stuff and things like that. I mean, if it was still viable, if you couldn't use it, is there somebody else that could use it and things of that nature? So yeah.
So this curious person, and I like the fact that I don't think we do this enough. You talked about your parents in such a way in terms of what they were and what they were outside of being your parents. Mm-hmm. I think we don't talk about lineage enough, right? And how you described that part, like where they were from and actually what. I don't think that we do that enough in our community, right? It kind of starts and ends with us. Yeah.
It doesn't, because you're influenced by your surroundings.
That's right.
And my surroundings, again, I had a blessed upbringing. I mean, I wouldn't say it was the easiest by any stretch of the means. I mean, you joke about Curious George. My thing was Clifford the Big Red Dog, right? I can't tell you how many fights I had to get into over that name, right? And then I wasn't a heavy kid, but I was tall. I was always kind of tall, and even though now at 6'3" and shrinking, as I say. I'm not tall anymore by today's standards, because kids get more time to grow up and grow bones and everything else of that nature. But with that being said, I played basketball. I mean, that was one of my favorites, right? Play basketball, we played football in the street, and baseball, really more like stickball and things like that. So, yeah.
So those things are important. So you have all this rich in history, rich in culture, growing up curious. You go to college. You come to Indiana. You said you played ball.
I didn't play basketball for Indiana Tech, but I played basketball while there, and that was a big distraction that I had to learn my way through.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you go to college. You end up getting 2 degrees and doing a lot of other educational things. Talk about that. Talk about that part of your journey leading up to now, like how that all informed and guided you to some of the things. I mentioned some of the things that you've done, but there's people out there that need to hear that in terms of your walk, in terms of it, and how similar that their thoughts are in dreams. So this curious guy, how does this professional, how do you do all that? Well,
this is one of the stories that I share oftentimes. I mean, probably not as publicly as I'm going to share it here now, but I started my academic career as a double E, electrical engineer, because I wanted to design amplifiers, sound equipment.
Sure.
Okay, back when I was coming up, right, the top would be to have your name on something. Right now, there are companies like Sony where you don't never know who designed something, but there are other amps and stuff that are actually named after people like Macintosh and Carver and things like that.
Right.
And that's what I wanted for myself. I wanted to design an amplifier circuit, and I was learning technology and diodes and discrete circuit boards and that kind of stuff. And that's what I went to school to do. Well, I mentioned the fact that I was a really strong academic student in high school. I had very poor study habits, and I took my very poor study habits because everything came easy to college. And both my parents, they provided me everything that they could possibly provide me, but I was first gen. So they didn't really understand everything and all the options. All they knew was you were going to go to college, and that's it. Nothing else said. In fact, the reason why I didn't play basketball at school on the team was that was a no-no. Like, school is for education, basketball is for leisure. You're going to go to school. We're not letting you do that. So I didn't go out for the team or anything, because that was just the way it was. Anyway, I'm going to shorten the story, and I'll save it for somebody to ask me on a personal basis. But my first year was not as academically successful as it should have been. My first semester.
Sure.
And then my second semester, instead of having the knowledge or the coaching to say, hey, look, you need to take a pause here, right? Let's regroup and start again fresh. The pressure to graduate with my peers made me continue on into the second class, and this was calculus that kicked my butt, that I should have had a stronger foundation in the first class.
Right.
And then, I passed in the first semester. The second semester, I flagged it, or I got an F. So I failed the class. And to make it up, I tried to do it over the summer, right? And that's a recipe for disaster. And I talked to young people going to college first year and stuff like that. I was like, hey, look, if they give you 16 weeks to do something and you can't do it in 16, it's probably not practical to try to do it in 8. Right, because the summer semester is shorter. And you don't have the support services. Now, remind you, this was a long time ago. This was back in the 80s, right? So the support services that you would normally have during the fall and spring semesters are not generally there in summer. It's pretty much dead and quiet. So all the professors and administrators and all that stuff were not there. Plus, now you got to figure out how you're going to pay for stuff, transportation, food, housing, stuff like that. So I worked. And, the money was good, and I worked and worked and worked. Now, mind you, that's another. If I was to say there's a pull-up opportunity, a lot of times we young men, particularly young black men, get distracted by the dollars, and it's temporary.
Definitely a pull-up moment. Let's go.
Right?
Let's go.
It's a temporary dollar amount, right? And you're thinking, man, I'm making it, right? But it is fractional. in the comparison if you were to complete the journey, right?
right.
To get your education, to graduate, to go on to other bigger, better things. And, I could have been stuck like a lot of young people that I see. You get a little job, you get a piece of change, you can buy the things you want. You got some nice clothes, some jewelry, a car, that kind of stuff. And you're living. Right. And there might be even some opportunities within the organization to kind of go, but they just kind of fell into it. They hadn't really planned it all out. And then they get kind of stalled. Right. Whereas if they had continued on, that they probably would have outperformed financially where they were right then and there.
And I think, again, folks, the pull-up moment is that you can get engaged with something that seems good temporarily.
Right.
And so often that happens to us because you probably never seen that before.
Bingo.
Particularly the money.
Bingo.
And you're like, man, this is it.
Yeah.
Right? I have friends, right? Could have been doctors or lawyers or attorneys. And I'm not just talking about the illegal things that they've chosen to get themselves to. That's part of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I say it's really to think about that psyche of someone who says, oh, this is cool now, right? I this is something that I never have, and you get stuck in that,
right?
And it's like a dream deferred almost. You don't get out of that in that cycle. So definitely a pull up moment on that.
So to finish off the academic, so needless to say, I did not finish, and I'm a technologist, right? I did not finish with a double E degree. I ended up changing my major. It's the funny part, I tell people this all the time. I still ended up having to take the calculus, so I still passed calculus. But
okay, good.
I ended up changing my track to computers.
Okay.
And again, this is the 80s and stuff like that.
Wow.
It's still early. I mean, we had a computer lab with like 4 computers. You had to book an hour on it to do your programming and stuff like that. I mean, that was all the computers that were around. Right. And so it was very, very early in that time. And I would say that was probably one of the best changes in my trajectory that I had. I probably would have, and you never know, right? It's like the path you didn't take, but I could have had the dream of getting to a company, designing an amplifier circuit, maybe having my name on it, maybe getting some royalties, and being absolutely positively satisfied with that. But I think the opportunity to go into technology and everything from, obviously simple programming to all the different technology that I like, some that I like today and some of them that I don't like today, all the way to where we're at right now with artificial intelligence. And this is, we're just scraping right now. I mean, there's so much more coming on the backside. So it ended up being really, really good for me. And I said, I'm blessed.
So you come out and you're doing computers, and I would like to say that one of the things that I think is important when you tell a story is that there was something inside of you that was driven that allowed you to be successful. So now that you get the degree in this, and then you become successful in this because you said there was no regrets. You made the switch, and you get a chance to work for a Fortune 100 company. Mm-hmm. You work for the city. Mm-hmm. You've done some work in the college in these spaces of technical whatever, but then you get into this leadership. Yeah. So this broad sense of professionalism that you have, and then being a business owner, can you just talk about that and why all these things were important, and all this curiosity, this kid that had all this curiosity that was into these technical things now becomes not just a technical professional, but a bona fide leader, and including a pilot, and by the way, a DJ as well.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot there. So back to a little bit of heritage, right? There's cultural jokes, that have some sense of truth to it. Being West Indies from Jamaica, right? The joke is, you only have one job? What? Like I got 5 jobs, right?
I remember that skit on the cover.
So the bottom line is that my father, even though he was a chemical engineer, he was also an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Right, we had property in New York.
Sure.
We owned houses and stuff like that. Okay. And it was always in me.
Pull-up moment. This is, a long time ago, right?
Yeah.
And There were entrepreneurs back then.
Yeah.
Obviously this is probably, I'm going to assume, Cliff, 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, late 70s.
Late 70s.
I mean, my father was in the 60s and stuff like that.
I'm
But
saying,
yeah, me.
but he was an entrepreneur then.
Right. Yes.
And you saw this.
And I saw that.
Right.
Right. I probably grew to appreciate it closer to the 70s, early 70s. But the point of the matter is that, it was also brought to me that, hey, look, you need to own something. You need to, and that was a drive, right? And so I needed to own my own company or do my own thing or something like that. And that drives me even yet to this day. So basically, one of the things that I kind of moved through in my life and my career is like, okay, what if this doesn't work? What's your backup plan? How will you do this? And I joke with people that I feel very confident in my ability to continue to do things that I don't feel trapped. I've done so many different things. And so, Fortune 100, Lincoln Financial, I had a great career there. Some of the work that I did at Lincoln Financial led me to K&K Insurance, and I did some really nice things there with people. And I do need to say this because nobody does it by themselves. So I don't want anybody to hearing this think, oh man, the superstar and did everything by themselves. No, there's other people around me that helped me and mentored me and that kind of stuff. I mean, I think of a lot of people. But anyway, so K&K back and forth in and out of Lincoln, and from Lincoln, I was climbing the corporate ladder at Lincoln and so on and so forth. Opportunity came up with the city of Fort Wayne with Mayor Richard and Graham Richard. And I became the city CIO, or Chief Information Officer. I did that for a few years, transitioned into the Henry administration. I'm very open about this. I two different styles of leadership between Graham and Mayor Henry. And we separated at that point, maybe about a year into the Henry administration. And then while I separated from there, I got a call shortly thereafter from a friend who says, hey, look, come on over to Ivy Tech. At that point in time, I had already launched my LLC. So I launched my own company. I was doing consulting. I was working. I was flying back and forth to Washington to do work with Public Technology Institute. I was doing CIO work with the state of Maryland for Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning Commission. I was doing educational training back and forth, one in the East Coast, then we go out to LA, we do one in the West Coast, and just kind of nurturing and building the next layer of technology leaders and things like that. So these were IT directors, CIOs, and things of that nature in the government space. I still do stuff like that. With CIOs and IT directors, but more locally, more regionally here in Northeast Indiana, Northern Indiana, anywhere from Allen County to St. Joe County, which is South Bend. But all of that to say, right, all along I was like thinking, okay, what is it that I like to do? Because I always felt that if I liked doing it, then I would be good at it, and I would be good financially. So back a long time ways, I had the DJ thing going on, and this is a short one. I called it Paradise Incorporated. That's from the Bible because paradise is very nice. That was my tagline.
That's actually a line that LL has.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, nice. LL Cool J. Yep, he sure does have that line. I think that song came out after mine, but I never really claimed it, so right. Okay. I never really had the trademark on it, but LL did have it.
That's right.
And I kind of hear it in my background here. But anyway, the point of the matter is that I came to college, right? So I already had that company going, and we were doing block parties and stuff like that. So again,
pull-up moment. He had a business while he was in college.
Well, that was before. That was in high school.
That was in high school.
In high school, and we were doing block parties and stuff like that.
But you moved from New York to come to Midwest, and you kept that
and
going.
I kept it, right? And so here's the thing, right? Like I said, started as Double E, changed the business, and then I realized, oh, wow, I can't call it incorporated unless it's actually incorporated in the state of Indiana, in the state that you're operating.
That's right.
So I quickly shut it. I didn't shut it down, but I changed the name until I can get all the paperwork filed, and then I got it incorporated. And so Paradise Incorporated, even though I do more specialty stuff now, more than the heavy stuff that I used to do in the past. It's over 30 years old. in the state of Indiana. So it's
And he has a bunch of records.
Yeah,
and
a lot.
I'm trying to get some of those records, by the way.
Love it. Love
so we'll let you know what happens with
Okay.
that. I'm still trying to get some of those
So,
records.
so that's one. And then, of course, like I mentioned, I started my my LLC, which is C2 IT Advisors. And again, I do all sorts of different things. Generally, I tell people it's on the higher order of stuff, right? So governance, IT security, enterprise project management, those types of things. There's plenty of folks that will do help desk and websites and things like that. So that's not my space. It's usually, as I say, around the board table type stuff, board advisory work, temporary, like virtual CIO type stuff. And then I have other entrepreneurial things that I do, and some real estate and that kind of stuff. So I have a whole mix of different things.
He's being very modest. This guy's like investments out the world. I mean, really global person in general. As we close here, the pilot thing.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking directly to the camera now.
Yeah.
I went to his house. I knew he was doing something with Pilot because he's talking to kids. And, I'll be honest with you. I thought he was just casually interested in something, and he was just kind of picking up and around pilots, wasn't really doing anything. You heard him say, if you didn't catch it, he said he was flying to one place to another for this work that he was doing. He's a pilot.
Yeah.
He actually has a plane, and he gets on a plane, and he flies a plane. And I say that's important. I had a lot of great images growing up. I was fortunate and blessed. I never knew someone that looked like me that was a pilot.
Yeah.
So I'm talking directly to the camera, and I just want you to speak to that.
Yeah.
How did that start? Real quickly, how did that start? Obviously, we know you're a dreamer. We know that all these different things.
Right.
What was involved in that?
So the short version was, again, as I was moving my career through Lincoln Financial, as anybody who's in business knows that the pyramid gets kind of tight at the top, right? And so you got to look at your seniority and where you're tracking and how fast you move and stuff like that. And again, I was driven, and I was thinking to myself that, hey, I'm going to need to consult at some point, right? I like coming from Brooklyn. I fell in love with the Fort Wayne community. Not initially, right? I tell people that right off the bat. It took a little while, but I fell in love with Fort Wayne, and I said, I want to raise this family. I was my wife, and we had kids, here. And my wife knew that I always talked about flying and everything else of that nature, and so I credit her with presenting me my discovery flight. She did it really, really nice. I'm going to give the short version. I won't try and embarrass anybody, but we went out to dinner, and the guy presented us a dinner. You go to these nice fancy restaurants, and they pull the little top off, and they pulled the top off, and it was a plane and little dots of whatever the sauce was, like the runway lights and everything else like that, in the Discovery flight. And even her friend says, you just better watch out, because once you turn Cliff onto this, it's like it's over and done with. Right. So anyway, I knew that if I wanted to live in Fort Wayne and willing to drive to consult, it would probably be about a 3-hour circle, right? So, you're talking Cincy, Toledo, Dayton, maybe Detroit, maybe Grand Rapids, possibly Chicago, Indianapolis. Those are the areas, right? You draw that same 3-hour circle, and you're on the East Coast. Right, and that was the real thing. So, as I mentioned, I worked with Maryland National Capital Parks and Planning. I worked with Public Technology Institute. Those are both East Coast things, right? And so, I would get up in the morning. We'd be wheels up by 5:30. I'd be on the East Coast by 8:30. Be in the office easily by 9. I'd work a full day. Sometimes I'd stay overnight, and be a couple days on site. But then if I wasn't doing that, I'd work a full day. Maybe it's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock before I tie it all up. I get in the plane, fly, and I'll be back at home in bed, my own bed.
How does one become a pilot, Cliff?
It's a lot. There's a lot to know. I really enjoy it. Obviously, there's weather. Understanding the weather, understanding rules of navigation, space, airspace, that kind of things. rules of the mechanics of the plane, how things operate, what does what, what features does what. And then there's a matter of proficiency of being able to demonstrate that. I'm an instrument rated pilot, meaning that I could fly into a situation where all I use is my instruments to guide me, to keep me going. There are a lower level is a visual pilot that has to have a good, clear day to be able to see. So
Wow.
the instrument rating allows me to fly in weather that maybe not the greatest at times. So
I told you all, this is, he talks about this stuff like, as a matter of fact, you heard him talk about this kind of stuff. But I think what was interesting is that you had used the word curiosity. This has really been a true pull-up moment, pull-up interview. Everything that I said that you represent is someone who has lineage, but was allowed the space to dream, create, imagine, and be curious. So in this moment right now, because I know you care about this, can you take a minute to speak directly to the camera and say, and I'm putting you on the spot, but what would you advise? I mean, you're in the entrepreneurial space. You've been in the community space, public space, as a public sector person. Why are all these things important right now? What would you advise someone out there right now in terms of maximizing those spaces?
Yeah, I would say that it's important to take the opportunities. Now, opportunities come and go. It's not like it's just one opportunity and you're done. But sometimes it's hard to see the really, really good opportunities or anything else like that. I think my curiosity helped me analyze where I might want to go a little bit further with various different things. I tell people, one of my biggest failures in life is wanting to particularly with my father, because I think a lot of young men, especially when they're in their developing years, want to prove themselves, right? I got it, I know, and I would say listen, especially when people are trying to help you, mentor you, educate you, and things like that, and take all that in. Like I was saying with the young men that are in my class, right? Sometimes I think they're missing an opportunity, right? And we see that, and we as adult men in our community, we have to work harder to help them because they don't know what they don't know. It's kind of like when I say, I know, like, you don't know. Right? You're
That's right.
All of 12 years
That's
old.
right.
What do you know, right? You just ripped apart my stereo console and
Yes.
can't figure out how to put it back together. You don't know, right?
right.
Just learn, right? and be willing to learn. And I think a lot of times we're so much in a rush to kind of prove ourselves that we miss the opportunity to kind of sit back and actually learn from a good mentor.
There it is. Pull up so we can lift up as they climb.
Yep.
Ha.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Now, Cliff, everyone that comes on this show, I think one person I may have missed, and I'm going to make sure she comes back to do that. Every good superhero has a theme song. I know you have several, you're DJ,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
for fun, what was that one song that inspires you?
I think that I think about it. It's Strife. Set it off.
Ooh, set it up on the...
Yep, set it off on the left, y'all. Set it off on the right. Set it off, and I think about I think I'm from a career and stuff like that, and I'm just trying to set it off.
Wow, good way to end, Cliff.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
My brother,
Appreciate it
for pulling up today. You got it today. We're going to kick this year off right because we want everyone to understand this show was specific to me. Again, one of the probably more talented individuals I know, the most in terms of all the things that he has done in his career and he continues to do.
Thank you about that.
And
Yeah,
I really wanted to be intentional with that and talk about how important it is for everyone out there. If you're watching right now, you're listening, whatever is going on, pull up on your purpose. In this moment right now, there's nothing more important than to being curious, dreaming, and having spaces to do that. He talked about history. Our history has said that. We're just like anyone else in terms of what we've done throughout the world in terms of our community. And it's there. It's there for you. And I know all of you that are out there watching right now, you have talent and abilities to do it, right? So we don't say have a happy new year. We say make it a great year. And we want you to continue to pull up each and every time. We're going to be talking to folks across the country in local communities, and hopefully it stimulates your own ambition on where you're at. So make it a great year. And thank you for pulling up.
And thank you.